And welcome back. Last time we, of course, had created a enemy wave structure here. So in our, of course, our game view and in our player view, we had a nice setup here where our player comes along. We can scrub through. We can see our enemy wave spawning. They can fly through here. And if I actually run that in my game, you can see we got that tuned up in such a way that we have our enemy ships coming across our player's path. And we, of course, will have to do something to make sure that the player's not going to collide or be destroyed or anything like that. So they're going to have to take some action. But one thing we see you can do, I'm going to lock my master timeline real quick here, just so that I'm not losing that. I'm going to actually head over to my project view here, and I actually want to head to my assets folder, and let's head into my prefabs. And I'm actually going to create a whole new prefab that's going to be for that enemy waves. So let's just call this our, how about our wave prefab? Yeah, there we go, that works. Waves prefab, that works, and I can actually now go ahead and take the enemy waves here that I have. This is one enemy wave, but I don't want that whole object. I just want the three waves, or the three greens, excuse me, because that is the one that has the timeline on it. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and drag that in here so to say that it can now exist as a prefab. And because it now exists in here as a prefab, I'll be able to use that in other parts of the scene without having to go through and recreate it. And so with this prefab down in place, we can easily add that in as another element to our scene. So for example, maybe I want to have one that's going to fly at the player. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and drag and drop them into the scene here. And you can see where they currently are all living out there. So there's my three greens right there. They're kind of a little further out there. So where they're at is, of course, based on where things are currently at. Now, if I go ahead and try to align these in here, again, you can see they're way out there. Let me actually just jump to that three greens there. So you can see they're all the way hanging out there at that particular moment of their existence. I'm not sure why these two are so farther out compared to this single one here. But that, of course, is a prefab that exists off of our original three greens that we had here in our timeline. Now, that is, of course, going to give us information that we can use to modify and play around with these. And so with our prefab created, it's very easy to add it back here into our scene to go ahead and do something such as adding these in. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop this in here. So here's our three greens prefab. And of course I have some objects that are all the way over there. I'm not quite sure why they're spawned all the way over there, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I can always tune that up. But just for a demonstration purposes, I'm going to bring these in real close to the player here just so we can see that. I'm actually going to rotate these around here. So let's just do something crazy like, let's say, the 270, just so we can kind of get those rotated around. Actually, I can just use my rotation here, just see where they're at. There they are. So here they are. And so if we look at that where they're at, we can actually go through and position them so that they are spawning basically right on top of our player, because that's what I really kind of want to do, to just kind of test this out so you can see exactly how this is working. So let me just bring those down here into the scene with the player, just so you can see how everything is going to end up working. So let me just, again, bring those real nice down close. So if I press play here, you can see them passing up overhead. So they are still quite high. So let me just zoom in more to where the player is. Grab these new prefabs. Oh yeah, you can see they're still quite high. So let me just bring those down so they're real nice and close and personal in the scene. And so now we should see them. There they are, going through the dirt. They're flying through. Excellent. So those are working there. And so now we have the ability to be able to manipulate those however we want them to be. So for example, I can actually take these and actually head into my timeline and actually create them as another control track. And maybe instead of them being here, I may want them to come down this alley at the player, so the player has to destroy them as they're coming in head on. So to handle that, let's just make ourselves another control track here. And I'm going to move this three enemies here as part of my enemy waves. And I can collapse this one right now. And I'm going to grab this new track and add it in here. And what I want to do, again, is edit this so that way as I go into this control track, I can do that. Now this, of course, is set here to handle this three greens one, you'll notice. And so I can actually come in here and edit these accordingly. So for example, I can actually tap on these recordings here to go through and edit them if I really want to. So let's go ahead and see where we are here with each of these individual pieces. You notice when I click on this, because this is set to its own control track, it is controlling this particular wave. And so I might say, okay, here's where these enemies are right now. I want to make sure that all set up. I want them to be coming at the player when we come down this alley here. So what I'm actually going to do is grab all three of these here, and I'm going to actually move them back so that we have a starting position of being here down this alley. And so that should get me a good position here. And again, I'm going to actually zoom in a lot more here. Let me just double click on that. There we go. And again, we want to make this nice and narrow, so the player has to try to take these on. Looks like I have one ship that's kind of all the way out here. I'm going to maybe want to bring that one back here. Actually, probably the easiest way to do is, looks like the exposition of that one is really different here in compared to some of these other ones. So we might want to change that. See, it looks like our Z coordinate is really far off here. So let me actually just adjust that one here. So I'm just actually going to copy this Z coordinate and place it in there. There we go. Now we have all our enemies kind of lined up here inside of our valley here. So I can now grab all these, so make it a little bit easier. I'm going to actually make it so that this group flies directly at the player. So I'm going to actually spawn back here. And all I want this group to do is I'm going to make it show that when we get to, I'm going to make this one a lot shorter. So with this time frame, instead of having all these different keys in here that are saying, hey, here's this position, I'm going to make it so that way basically they can come through and just fly straight at the player. So again, here's our initial position of where we want everything to be. Notice though it didn't record those positions because even though I was playing around with them, they are probably still all the way back over here. I forgot to actually tab on record there, so I want to actually record those positions here for those different ships here. Otherwise, we're going to end up in the issue where my players are going to be wondering where are these enemies actually at. So again, let's grab all these here, and I'm going to want to, I think that was the Z coordinate I was playing with. Yep, so there's the Z coordinate there, and let's go ahead and just bring those up in the X. And let me just zip over to that particular location. And so this, we want to make sure we are at time 0. So we'll make sure we save that here. So this needs to be there, a key there for each of these 3 ships. Those, of course, if you look, are right now a little high. So I'm going to want to actually bring those down. There we go. And so let's actually record that. So update key, that actually does that right there for me. And so now those are registered for that 0 position. Now, one thing I want to point out is even though this is looking pretty good, I might want to shorten down this one. So for this, I'm actually going to go into animation window, which of course you can just right click and you can edit in the animation window, bring those keys up there. So here's my individual keyframes. I may not want this last keyframe here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and hit delete keys. That's going to shorten this animation altogether. I'm going to do the same thing for my other ships as well. So let's just go ahead and make sure we edit animation window. We're going to remove that last key there because again, I don't necessarily want this one to be quite as long. So now I can delete that as well. And so now that this is set, let's go ahead and head back over to our game window here. And if we save everything real quick, let's go ahead and just give it a quick run, just see how that's looking. So we should of course see that first set of enemies fly right past us. There they are. And there's that other set of enemies which of course are there as well. Now, one thing you might have a consequence of, and I just noticed this myself, is when I remove that frame there, it's that, oh, these ships all kind of stopped here. So I need to actually go through and add in need to basically undo my work there just a little bit here because it looks like I might have actually, when removing that one piece of information from the timeline, I might have actually removed it from the prefab itself. And so let's actually go back and look at the game here. There they go. Now my ships are flying back in. Now it does look like though that the things that are flying at me might not be flying through a little too soon, which means I might have to actually, on my master timeline, actually go through and adjust the spawning in of these here. Because as of right now, there they go. That looks a little better. So they are, of course, racing through the ground there just a little bit. So I might want to make it so with that particular group, maybe at that 7-second mark, I'm going to have them pull up a little bit. I actually probably also want to have these spawn in just a little further. So let me just adjust this again. And you can see now we get to this mark. That looks pretty good. I'm not as worried about them. Of course, at that point, you can see they look a little bit low in comparison to where the player's at that point. So the easiest way to adjust that, I'm going to go to my 3 greens here. Let's see where we can find these enemies at, because we just need to adjust basically their recorded positions here. So in these 3 greens 1 group, we need to adjust where they're at in our scene view. So if I just jump real quick here, you can see here is our coordinates. We need to move them up in the y direction, actually just a little bit here, because it looks like they are kind of going into the ground. Yep, they are actually flying downward into the ground. So if we go here to like our 7.5 mark here, so where they're finishing, looks like they are kind of ending up in a position where they aren't really advantageous, because again, you look, they're going down, 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 and then they start going up again. So we actually want to edit all these other keyframes, and that's because the other prefab I had kind of doing some dipping, whereas this one I don't want them to dip. I want them to kind of stay more straight on. So at this first time from here, I'm going to want to make sure I come in here and do something more. Let's keep them maybe more like at 70, just so they kind of stay a little bit more in position there. And I want to, again, record that for each of these, so that way those stay exactly where I want them to. So there's 1. We look at 2 and see where they are at 2. And so I can go look at those enemy ships there. So at 2, again, look, it's down to 60. I'm going to keep that again more just at 70 here. And I should be able to, I think, do that, apply across to all of them. Let's see if it will take it. Yes, it did. All right, check 1. Looks like that's good. We're going to go to 3 now. And 3 is at 70, so that kept there. If we look at these ones, that one's at 55, so I need to adjust that one. And let's check this one. That one's at 47. Oh my goodness. No wonder why our missiles were disappearing into the ground. And let's just check this last kind of frame that's at 80. I'm okay with that one. All right, let's just go ahead and see how that looks more in the game view. If I go ahead and press that now, the player's going to make their turn. Here comes our side missiles. And we should, of course, zoom. There goes the other ones. They fly right past us. So those move pretty quickly there. So I might want to adjust those maybe just a little bit again. But that's just more of some fine tuning that I can do. So here's my parting challenge for you. Go ahead and in your game world, let's go ahead and adjust these, add additional timelines, maybe make some additional enemy waves so that you can go ahead and have these different things spawn in and stuff like that. Because I think at this point I have given you enough fundamental knowledge to at least set up a first kind of track run of different things that can fly through your world, fly at your player, and I think this should get you in pretty good shape.